Flowers are such an important part of gardening, and if you want to encourage lots of wildlife into your garden, then a native wildflower meadow is a must. Over the course of a year, I'm going to show you how I turn this patch of lawn around my pond from this into a vibrant and colourful plot of British flora teeming with life. It's not as simple as just putting seeds down and hoping it'll come up. Grass, particularly lawn, is tough and a bit of a bully, so it's gotta go, or at least be battered. There's a few ways to achieve this. You could simply remove the top layer of soil, which contains all the nutrients and most of the grass, but this is quite labour intensive, and depending on the size of the area, you'll need a skip to get rid of all the unwanted soil, so that wasn't an option here. Instead, I went for the easy way out of cutting the grass to within an inch of its life. I went over with a lawnmower first on its lowest setting, then got a strimmer out, which is the meadow maker's favourite tool, and beat the shit out of the remaining grass. You'll want it so you're getting lots of patches of bare soil. I then rake all the loose bits of vegetation and remove it. You don't want the cut grass or plants rotting and adding more nutrients to the soil. This all goes into my garden waste bin, if it'll bloody come out the box. This won't kill all the grass, but it will significantly slow it down, and you now have a couple of options. Over parts of the ground, I put tarpaulin ground sheets. This would be around September, and I'll leave them until January. This means any grass trying to emerge in that time is denied light and moisture, killing most of it off. It also stops seeds getting in naturally, which is inevitable and sometimes a good thing, but for now I'm trying to control what's growing here. The other option, and you can do this after the sheets also, is to start planting plants that are parasitic to grass. The best known example is yellow rattle. This unassuming plant has its seeds land near the grass roots and attaches to them, leaching vital nutrients from them like a tumour. They don't kill the grass, but they make it less vigorous and allows other wildflowers to get a head start over the grass. A lot of people fail with yellow rattle, and my tips for getting it to work are sow the seeds on the surface. Don't dig them in. They need light, warmth, and a cold snap in the winter to germinate, so sowing these seeds before the first frost is ideal, but any time before the spring should still result in germination. When I pick the sheets up, I pull out any dead grass and any roots that are still there, then I place some yellow rattle on as well. I should note that there are other species that do the same thing as yellow rattle, like eyebright and red barista, and may be worth a go also. The reason I've removed the sheets in January is I had already planted lots of bulbs, which would be poking out in the next month or so. Traditionally, most native wildflower seeds grow best if they're sowed in the autumn, so if you can, that's certainly the best time. If you are doing the sheet method though, you can't put the seeds in right away, so the way I got round this was to grow them in trays outside. I bought a few trays and pots and put an assortment of seeds into them from species I'd collected on road verges and bought online, sourcing UK grown seeds. Once these are established, you can cut the seed trays into chunks and plant on the bare soil, giving them a clear area to grow. You can also just buy wildflowers that are already grown from places like Naturescape, which is where I get most of mine from, as it's quite close to where I live. I did try putting some orchid seeds in the ground also. Orchids are very difficult to be grown naturally, but thought it was worth a go. The seeds are ridiculously small and can take up to 7 years before they show, but fingers crossed they establish. As I mentioned earlier, I planted some bulbs, and this is a great way to get some early colour to the meadow and nectar for insects. I went for daffodils, which, like yellow rattle, the seeds need cold weather to germinate. I also planted snowdrops, which are normally the first to flower. Snake's head fritillary, which have beautiful purple bells. They often like damp areas, so planted them when my pond overflows. I also put in the classic English bluebell, which will be out in April. It's important to try and plant flowers that all bloom at different times of the year, so you don't just have a meadow that's colourful for 2 weeks in May and bugger all the rest of the year, but also so it has a constant supply of cover and nectar for bees, butterflies and bugs. Along with the bulbs, another fantastic early flowering native is the cowslip. With its crinkly leaves and yellow flower, it's a great addition to the early spring meadow. What stays and what goes ultimately is up to you as the gardener. I tend to be a live and let live, within reason. As long as some of the gatecrashers don't start to take over the meadow, I don't mind the odd dandelion, grass shoot or nettle, as they all have great uses for wildlife. Dandelions are a favourite of many bees, and nettles play host to many butterflies. Once you get into May, you'll really notice the difference. The meadow will start to spring into life as a green wall erupts. If you peer in, you should be able to find some of the yellow rattle if it's been successful with its pointy leaves and round yellow flower. It's always a gamble as to what will grow, and you won't really know until you try. I suggest planting maybe a dozen or so species, and generally you'll find 2 or 3 will be dominant. This can vary from year to year, but this year the poppies went crazy, along with the oxeye daisy adding a palette of reds, pinks and whites. I also had fox and cubs, which is often seen as a pest that has fiery red flowers. Viper's buglis adding some blue, and a couple of stowaways I didn't plant, like this species of geranium and a figwort which the wasps absolutely loved and was full of mullein moth caterpillars which were gorgeous. Because my meadow is right next to the pond, it also meant I could add marginal flowering plants like yellow flag iris and marsh marigold to the mix. The emerging damselfly certainly enjoyed all the vegetation to rest on, and on the stalks I had this beautiful migrant hawker which was so shiny as it had just metamorphosized. All the wildflowers also created a nice bit of shade over the pond during the summer, halting it drying out as quickly, and some relief for the local frogs. As the year progresses to July and August, other species take hold, with wild carrot really starting to put on a show. Purple loosestrife is a later flowering plant and just as happy in the pond as it is in the meadow, which the butterflies love. Now this isn't strictly native or in my meadow, but thought it was worth a mention as I have a large buddleia next to the pond which the butterflies love, but this year also attracted hummingbird hawk moths, which I absolutely lost my shit over. They were awesome. They would also visit the meadow. When it gets to mid-September, it's time to cut the meadow down. You can leave it of course, and over the winter it'll give shelter to many creatures and birds that will feed on the seed heads. But it can look messy if that sort of thing bothers you, and may affect what comes up the following year, so you could do a partial cut. In this case, it's all going though. Before I started hacking away, I collect the seeds. This is one of the simple joys of having a wildflower meadow, so that you can grow seeds elsewhere, give them away to friends, or sow after the cut. To store the seeds, it's best to put them in a paper bag somewhere in a dry and relatively cool place, like a shed or an outhouse. Many of the stems are thick, so a strimmer will struggle at this stage, so I cut away at it with shears, first getting as low to the ground as possible. After this, then I get my old friend the strimmer out and we get to work. It can look brutal, but you need to get as close to the ground as possible, and it's amazing what some of the perennials can bounce back from. Like before, take away all the loose cuttings, and you have a blank canvas. If you want to try new plants, this is the time to do it. The ground will likely already have lots of seeds in it, so you may not even need to add more to it. So that's how I created my mini meadow in under a year. A relatively easy process, and apart from the cut at the end of the year, it's labour free. So why not give it a go yourself? Thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel, liking the video and subscribing to the channel really helps me out, But you can also donate to my buymeacoffee.com link, and all the money from that goes back into making new films for the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. You can check out some other videos in the links here. Also check out my website and social media, as well as the podcast that I host, the Bearded Tits Podcast. Cheers.